The porcelain mask was cool against Sera's skin as she adjusted it for the 1000th time that morning. White as bone, delicate as a lie, painted with silver filigree that caught the light just so. Beautiful, they called it. The mysterious masked servant of the Crimson Moon Pack. No one remembered anymore that beneath the artistry lay devastation. 12 years. 12 years since the fire. 12 years since she'd looked in a mirror without flinching. 12 years since anyone had seen her face. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Girl. Mistress Harding's shrill voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. The Alpha King's delegation arrives within the hour. Those pastries better be perfect, or I'll have your hide. Yes, mistress, Sera murmured, keeping her eyes on the honeycakes she was arranging with careful precision. The mask hid most expressions, which made servitude easier. No one could see the flash of resentment, the flicker of exhausted resignation. The Crimson Moon Pack wasn't cruel, not like some she'd heard about. They'd taken her in when she was 15, burned and broken, with nowhere else to go. But kindness and acceptance were different things. She was the masked girl, the scarred servant, useful but untouchable. Move faster, Harding snapped, though Sera was already working at double speed. Alpha King Kalen doesn't tolerate imperfection. They say he killed his own cousin for lying to him, ripped out his throat in front of the entire court. Sera's hands didn't falter, though her heart did. The Alpha King, the most powerful werewolf in all 7 territories. The one they called the Savage Truth, because he could scent a lie from 100 paces and punish deception more harshly than any other crime. What would someone like that think of a woman who wore a mask every day of her life? He's race, bringing his whole council, another servant whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. 300 wolves. They're deciding whether to renew the alliance with Crimson Moon or dissolve it entirely. The political implications meant nothing to Sera. Alpha King or Stable Boy, her life wouldn't change. She'd serve, she'd hide, she'd survive. That was enough. It had to be. The great hall had been transformed. Banners of crimson and gold hung from ancient rafters, tables groaned under the weight of a feast, and the air hummed with nervous energy. Alpha Marcus of Crimson Moon paced near the dais, his normally steady hands adjusting his formal collar again and again. Positions, Mistress Harding hissed, and the servants scattered to their assigned stations. Sera took her place along the eastern wall, holding a pitcher of spiced wine. From here, she could observe without being observed, or so she'd always thought. The mask helped with that, made her part of the stand, decoration rather than a person. Trumpets sounded. The massive oak doors swung open. He walked in like he owned the very air. Alpha King Kalen was taller than any werewolf she'd ever seen, his shoulders broad enough to block out the light from the doorway. Black hair fell to his shoulders, and his eyes silver, not the typical gold or amber, swept the room with an intensity that made grown alphas lower their gazes. He wore no crown, needed no symbols of power. Authority radiated from him like heat from a forge. Alpha Marcus, his voice carried effortlessly across the hall. Deep, commanding, with an edge that suggested violence barely restrained. Your hospitality is legendary. I hope it lives up to its reputation. Alpha King, Marcus bowed. Not deeply enough to show submission, but enough to acknowledge respect. Everything we have is yours. Kalen's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Everything? Careful with such promises, Marcus. I have a habit of collecting on them. The feast began with formal toasts and political posturing. Sera moved through the hall like a ghost, refilling glasses, removing plates, invisible as always. She'd perfected the art of being present without being seen, until his gaze found her. She felt it like a physical touch, that silver stare locking onto her from across the room. Sera kept her movements steady, professional, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Why was the Alpha King staring at a servant? You? His voice cut through the dinner conversation like a blade through silk. The hall fell silent. The one with the mask. Sera froze. Every eye in the room turned toward her. Approach, Kalen commanded, and it wasn't a request. Her legs moved without conscious thought, carrying her toward the high table where the Alpha King sat. She stopped at the appropriate distance, curtsying low, eyes fixed on the stone floor. Closer, he said softly, dangerously. She stepped forward, and again, until she stood directly before him, close enough to catch his scent pine and snow, and something wild that made her wolf, dormant for so long, stir uneasily inside her. "Look at me." Sera raised her eyes to meet his, grateful for once for the mask. Without it, he would have seen the fear, the confusion, the dangerous flutter of something she couldn't name. "Why do you wear that?" he asked, his head tilting slightly. "The mask. Why?" The hall held its breath. Alpha Marcus started to speak. "She was injured, my lord. She prefers—" "I didn't ask you." Kaelin cut him off without looking away from Sera. "I asked her." Sera's mouth went dry. It protects, my lord." "Protects?" One dark eyebrow rose. "From what?" "From being seen." Something flickered in those silver eyes. Not mockery, something deeper, more unsettling. Understanding, perhaps. "And what are you hiding from?" The truth sat on her tongue like poison. Judgment, pity, disgust, rejection. Nothing of consequence, she whispered instead. A lie, though not quite. What did her scars matter to an alpha king? His nostrils flared slightly. Liar. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Sera's blood turned to ice. Everyone knew what the alpha king did to liars. A stood, his full height even more imposing up close. "I could have you executed for that lie. Here, now. Would anyone object?" Silence. Of course not. She was just a masked servant, expendably. "But I find myself curious," Kaelin continued, circling her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. "What could possibly be so terrible that you'd risk death rather than reveal it?" His fingers grazed the edge of her mask, and Sera jerked back instinctively. "Please." The word escaped before she could stop it. "Please don't." "Don't what?" He moved closer. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Don't reveal what you hide? Don't expose your secrets?" His voice dropped to a rough whisper. "Don't see you?" Yes, she breathed, hating the tremor in her voice. "Interesting." He stepped back, returning to his seat with the fluid grace of a wolf. "You're assigned to my personal service during this summit. Whatever I need, whenever I need it. Do you understand?" Sera's legs nearly buckled with relief that he'd stepped away, but a new terror took its place. "Personal service to the Alpha King." "Yes, my lord." "Good. Now get out of my sight before I change my mind about that lie." She fled. Through the hall, past the kitchens, into the servants' quarters where she finally allowed herself to collapse against the wall, gasping for breath. Her hands shook as she touched the mask, reassuring herself it was still in place, still hiding, still protecting. What did he want from her? Why had he singled her out? Deep in her chest, her wolf silent for 12 years whispered a truth she refused to acknowledge. He smells like home. The Alpha King's quarters occupied the entire western tower of Crimson, Moon's fortress. Sera climbed the spiral stairs with a tray of breakfast, her legs protesting after a sleepless night. She'd spent the hours before dawn staring at the ceiling, replaying that silver gaze, that dangerous curiosity, the way his voice had wrapped around the word leer like a caress and a threat. Her wolf hadn't settled since the feast. After 12 years of silence, the creature inside her was pacing, restless, whining for something Sera refused to name. She knocked on the heavy oak door, keeping her eyes downcast. Enter. The room was surprisingly sparse for royalty. A massive bed, barely disturbed. Weapons displayed on the walls like art. Books, hundreds of them stacked on every surface. And standing by the window, shirtless, was the Alpha King himself. Sera's breath caught. His back was a canvas of scars, some silver with age, others still pink and healing. Claw marks, bite wounds, what looked like a burn that stretched from shoulder blade to spine. A history of violence written in flesh. He turned, catching her staring. "Do they bother you?" "No, my lord." The truth, for once. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Most people find them disturbing, evidence of battles that should have killed me. He moved toward her with that predatory grace, taking the tray from her hands and setting it aside. "But you didn't flinch. Why?" "Because I understand them," she thought. "Because scars are just proof you survived. "I've seen worse," she said instead. His eyes narrowed. "Have you? Where?" The trap was so obvious, yet she'd walked right into it. "I misspoke, my lord. Another lie." He circled her again, and she realized this was a habit of his, studying threats from all angles. "You're full of them, aren't you? Little lies, careful evasions, all to protect that mask. The mask protects nothing of importance." "Then remove it." Her hands flew to her face instinctively, clutching the porcelain edges. "I can't." "Can't?" His voice dropped dangerously low. "Or won't." "Please. Please," she whispered, hating herself for begging. "Ask anything else of me. Anything." Kaelin stopped directly in front of her, so close she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "What happened to you?" The question was so unexpected, so gentle compared to his earlier commands, that tears burned behind her eyes. No one had asked. Not in 12 years. They'd accepted the mask, adjusted to it, stopped questioning, but he wanted to know, wanted to understand. "Fire," she heard herself say. "When I was 15, my pack was attacked by rogues. They burned everything, everyone." Her voice cracked. "I tried to save my little brother. I couldn't reach him. The roof collapsed. I should have died with him." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. "But you didn't die," Kaelin said finally, his hand rising as if to touch her face, then dropping. "You survived. Sometimes survival is just another form of cowardice." "No." The word cracked like a whip. "Survival is the bravest thing you can choose. Every day you wake up, every breath you take in spite of the pain, that's courage. That's strength." His silver eyes burned with an intensity that made her chest ache. "And anyone who made you feel otherwise is a fool." Sera's world tilted. When was the last time anyone had called her brave? When had anyone seen past the mask to the person underneath? "Why do you care?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "I'm just a servant, less than nothing to someone like you." Something dangerous flashed across his face. "You think I don't recognize a survivor when I see one? You think I don't know what it's like to wear a mask?" He gestured to his scarred torso. "Mine is just more visible." "That's different. Your scars are. They're honorable. Battle wounds. Mine are just what?" He stepped even closer, close enough that she could feel his breath against her forehead. "Just evidence that you fought? That you tried to save someone you loved? That you survived when you should have burned?" His hand finally made contact, fingers gracing the edge of her mask with unexpected gentleness. "There's no such thing as shameful scars, little wolf. Only shameful people who make you feel that way." The endearment little wolf struck something deep inside her. Her wolf surged forward, pressing against her ribcage, demanding to be acknowledged, demanding to be seen by him. No, she couldn't. If he saw, if he knew what the fire had truly done. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Kaelin stepped back, his expression shifting from unexpected softness to cold authority in a heartbeat. "Enter," A commanded. One of his advisors, a stern-faced beta named Thomas, bowed low. "Alpha King, the council meeting is in an hour. Alpha Marcus has concerns about the territorial agreements." "I'll be there." Kaelin's tone dismissed the beta, who hurried out. He turned back to Sera, and for just a moment, she saw something in his eyes that looked like regret. "Go. Prepare for the council session. You'll serve as my personal attendant." "Yes, my lord." "Kaelin," it corrected quietly. "When we're alone, call me Kaelin." She fled before she could do something foolish, like agree. The council chamber was a battleground of politics and barely concealed hostility. Alphas from 5 different packs had gathered, each with their own agendas, alliances, and ancient grudges. Sera stood in the shadows behind Kaelin's chair, pitcher in hand, trying to be invisible. It wasn't working. She could feel eyes on her, curious, assessing, judgmental. The masked servant who'd somehow caught the Alpha King's attention. "The border disputes have escalated," Alpha Marcus was saying, his jaw tight. "The Shadow Ridge Pack has been pushing into our hunting grounds for months. We need assurance that the Crown will support our territorial claims." "Support?" Alpha Darius of Shadow Ridge sneered. "You mean validate your theft of lands that belong to us for generations. Those lands were won in honorable combat." "Enough." Kaelin's single word silenced them both. I didn't come here to referee your petty squabbles. The alliance stands or falls based on your ability to maintain peace among yourselves. With respect, Alpha King, a smooth voice interrupted. A woman stepped from the shadows, and Sera's blood turned to ice. Baroness Lydia Ashford, silver blonde hair, ice blue eyes, a smile like poison honey, and the woman who'd ordered the attack on Sera's pack 12 years ago. The true issue, Lydia continued, gliding forward with serpentine grace, is whether Crimson Moon has the strength to honor the alliance. After all, they harbor defectives. Her gaze slid to Sera. Weaklings who hide behind masks rather than face the world honestly. Sera's hands tightened on the pitcher until she heard porcelain crack. Careful, Baroness. Kaelin's voice was deceptively soft. Your words suggest you value appearance over substance, a dangerous philosophy. I value transparency, my lord. Honesty. Surely you of all wolves appreciate that? Lydia's smile widened. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. Let's see what the masked servant hides. Let's see if Crimson Moon truly has nothing to be ashamed of. You will not, Alpha Marcus began, but Lydia was already moving. She was fast, beta-born but trained, her hand shooting out to grab the edge of Sera's mask. Sera twisted away, but not fast enough. Fingers hooked beneath porcelain, janking, touch her. Kaelin's voice was Arctic death, and you lose the hand. Everyone froze. The Alpha King had moved so quickly that no one had seen him rise. He stood between Sera and Lydia, his body a wall of lethal promise. Alpha King. Lydia purred, though her hand had dropped. I meant no offense. I simply thought, you thought to humiliate someone under my protection. Silver eyes blazed with a barely contained rage. You thought to expose someone's pain for your entertainment. He took a step forward, and Lydia actually retreated. You thought wrong. The girl is nothing. Lydia tried again, her mask of sweetness cracking. A scarred Omega not even worthy of. The sound of Kaelin's fist hitting the table silenced her. The ancient oak split down the center. She is under my personal protection, he said, each word precise and deadly. Which means an insult to her is an insult to me. Would you like to continue this line of conversation, Baroness? Because I promise you won't enjoy where it leads. Lydia's face had gone pale. She bowed stiffly. My apologies, Alpha King. I spoke rashly. You spoke honestly. For once. Kaelin's lip curled. Your transparency is noted. Now get out of my sight before I forget the laws against killing council members. Lydia fled, her entourage scrambling after her. The remaining alphas stared in stunned silence. Alpha Marcus looked, between Kaelin and Sera, with dawning understanding, and something that might have been concern. This council is adjourned, Kaelin announced. We reconvene tomorrow, and anyone who even looks at my attendant the wrong way will find themselves answering to me personally. Are we clear? A chorus of yes, Alpha King followed him as he strode from the chamber, Sera hurrying in his wake. He didn't stop until they'd reached his quarters, the door slamming shut behind them with enough force to rattle the hinges. I'm sorry, Sera whispered. I've caused you trouble. I should have... Should have what? He whirled on her, and she saw that his rage wasn't directed at her at all, but at the situation, at Lydia, at a world that had made her feel she needed to hide. Should have let that viper humiliate you? Should have stood there while she tried to rip away your protection? I'm used to it. The words hung in the air like a confession. Used to it, he repeated, his voice dropping to something rough and broken. You're used to being treated like you're less than nothing. Used to people trying to expose you for their entertainment. Used to cruelty masquerading as honesty. Sera couldn't meet his eyes. It's not your burden to bear, my lord. Kaelin. He corrected automatically, then closed the distance between them, in 2 long strides. And you're wrong. Everything about you has become my burden. Your pain, your fear, your God's damned mask. His hands framed her face, careful not to touch the porcelain. Do you know what you are to me? Her wolf was howling now, throwing itself against the cage of her ribs. But Sera forced the words out. A curiosity. A puzzle you want to solve. No. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, the mask the only thing between them. You're my mate. The world stopped. That's impossible. She breathed, even as her wolf sang in recognition. I'm Omega. Scarred. Broken. I'm not. You're mine. He cut her off, his voice raw, with possessive certainty. From the moment I saw you, I knew. My wolf knew. This, he gestured between them, this is destiny. This is the mate bond that songs are written about and wars are fought over. You don't even know what I look like, she protested weakly. I know everything that matters. I know you're brave enough to wear your protection openly, strong enough to serve people who don't value you, compassionate enough to flinch at my scars while hiding your own. I know your voice shakes when you're afraid, but you speak anyway. I know you smell like honey and smoke and something wild that drives my wolf absolutely insane. His hands trembled against the mask. I know that whoever convinced you that you need to hide is a liar and a coward. Kaelin, show me. The command was gentle but absolute. Not because I demand it, not because you're under my protection. Show me because you want to be seen, because you're tired of hiding. Because, his voice cracked, because I'm begging you, the Alpha King, begging. Sera's hands rose to the mask, trembling violently. 12 years. 12 years of safety behind porcelain. 12 years of never having to see disgust or pity in someone's eyes. But when she looked at Kaelin, she saw neither of those things. She saw hunger, hope, something that looked terrifyingly like love. If you're wrong, she whispered. If the bond is mistaken, it's not. If you see me and you're disgusted, impossible, you don't know, then show me. His hands moved to cover hers where they clutched the mask. Show me, Sera. Let me see my mate. He knew her name. Somewhere in the past day, he'd learned her name. That simple fact broke something inside her. Sera's fingers found the ribbon at the back of her head, untied the knot she'd perfected over 12 years, felt the mask loosen against her skin. One breath, two. She pulled it away. The left side of her face was smooth, unmarred, young and almost pretty in the firelight, but the right side. The scars started at her temple and flowed down across her cheek, her jaw, her neck. Burn scars, mottled pink and white, pulling her skin tight in places, leaving others strangely smooth. Her right eye was clouded, blind, the eyelid reconstructed but imperfect. Her lips on that side didn't quite close properly, giving her smile a permanent, crooked quality. She'd stopped looking in mirrors a decade ago. Sera forced herself to meet Kaelin's gaze, to watch the exact moment when reality shattered fantasy, when he realized what he'd bound himself to. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. Not a polite smile, not a pitying smile. A smile of pure, devastating wonder. Beautiful, he breathed. You're absolutely beautiful. And he kissed her. The kiss shattered every defense Sera had built over 12 years. Kaelin's mouth moved against hers with a gentleness that belied his savage reputation, his hands cradling her scared face like she was something precious. The mate bond flared between them, a living thing made of starlight and inevitability, and Sera felt her wolf surge forward with a joy so profound it hurt. When he finally pulled back, his silver eyes were blazing with wolf gold at the edges. Say it, he commanded softly. Say you feel it too. I feel it, she whispered, her voice breaking. The bond, you, everything. Then why are you crying? She hadn't realized she was. Tears streamed down both sides of her face, the scarred and the smooth, and she couldn't seem to stop them. Because I don't understand. You could have anyone. Any alpha female from any pack. Beautiful, powerful, whole. Why would you want you? He cut her off, his thumb gently wiping away her tears. I want you. Not some imagined perfect mate, but you. Sera. The woman who survived fire and loss and 12 years of hiding. The woman who's brave enough to serve people who don't see her value. The woman who begged me not to remove her mask, but did it anyway because I asked. His forehead rested against hers again, and this time there was no porcelain between them. You are not broken, little wolf. You're a survivor, and you're mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, it made her wolf purr with satisfaction. I don't know how to be anyone's mate, she admitted. I've spent so long being invisible. Then we'll figure it out together. He pulled back enough to look at her properly, his gaze tracing every scar with an intensity that made her breath catch. But first, I need you to understand something. The Baroness Lydia Ashford. She's more than just politically ambitious. There's a reason she focused on you specifically. Sera's blood chilled. What do you mean? Kaylin's expression darkened. I've been investigating the attack on your pack for the past 6 months. The rogues who burned your village? They were hired, paid to eliminate your entire bloodline. The world tilted. No. It was just rogues. Random violence, nothing is random when it comes to pack politics. He guided her to a chair, kneeling before her so they were eye level. Your father was alpha of the Moonfire Pack. Small territory, yes, but strategically located. The land bordered 3 major packs' territories, including Shadow Ridge. Whoever controlled Moonfire controlled access to the northern hunting grounds. Sera's hands were shaking. My father was a good man. He wouldn't have. He refused to sell. Lydia made him 3 offers, each more generous than the last. When he continued to refuse, she hired the rogues. Kaylin's jaw tightened. You weren't supposed to survive, Sera. No one was. But somehow, a 15-year-old girl crawled out of those flames and disappeared into the territories. The memories crashed back with brutal clarity. Not just the fire, but the days before. Strange wolves at the borders. Her father's worried. Meetings with the council. Her mother hiding valuables, preparing as if for siege. They knew, she whispered. My parents knew something was coming. My mother hadn't part. They suspected, but they trusted the old laws that pack lands couldn't be taken through assassination. They were wrong. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Lydia claimed the territory through right of salvage. No heirs survived, so the land reverted to the crown, and I, he grimaced, foolishly granted it to Shadow Ridge as a peace offering 3 years ago. You didn't know. I should have investigated more thoroughly. I should have questioned why an entire pack died so conveniently. Silver eyes blazed with self-directed fury. And now she's here, in the same room as you. And I can't kill her without proof. The proof burned with everything else. Maybe not. Kaylin stood, moving to a locked chest in the corner. He withdrew a leather-bound journal, its pages singed at the edges. This was recovered from the ruins of your pack house. One of my investigators found it 6 months ago, buried beneath the collapsed east wing. Sera recognized it immediately. My father's journal. He wrote in it every night. Her voice cracked. I thought it was destroyed. The last entry is dated the night before the attack. He handed it to her gently. Read it. With trembling hands, Sera opened to the final pages. Her father's handwriting, precise and careful, filled the paper. The Ashford woman came again today. Her offer has increased to 50,000, but I cannot accept. This land has belonged to Moonfire for 6 generations. To sell it would be to betray every ancestor who fought to keep it. But I am afraid. The rogues at the borders are not random. They watch. They wait. Lydia Ashford smiles when she speaks of partnership, but her eyes promise violence. If anything happens to me, if the worst comes to pass, I have hidden the proof in. The entry ended there, cut off mid-sentence by flames, or fear. In what? Sera breathed. Where did he hide the proof? That's what I've been trying to find out. Kaylin took the journal back, his expression thoughtful. But I think you might know. Something your father would have told only family. Something a 15-year-old girl would remember even after 12 years. Sera closed her eyes, reaching for memories she'd buried beneath ash and trauma. Her father had been a careful man, methodical. If he'd hidden something important, it would be somewhere meaningful. Somewhere. Her eyes snapped open. The ceremony stone. The one we used for full moon rituals. It was ancient, older than the pack itself, with a hollowed base that, she swallowed hard, that my brother and I used to hide treasures in. Small things. Stones we thought were pretty. Dried flowers. And your father knew about this hiding place? He caught us once. Made us promise never to tell anyone else about it, he said. Tears threatened again. He said some secrets are worth keeping. Kaylin's smile was fierce. Then that's where we'll find what we need. But the territory belongs to Shadow Ridge now. We can't just walk in and, I'm the Alpha King, little wolf. I can walk anywhere. I damn well please. He pulled her to her feet, and this time his kiss was quick but fierce. Get some rest. Tomorrow night, we're going hunting. Sleep was impossible. coming ratted, and work the ratted dollar. Sera lay in the small servants' quarters she'd been assigned, staring at the ceiling, her fingers constantly rising to touch her bare face. The mask sat on the bedside table, porcelain gleaming in the moonlight, but for the first time in 12 years, she didn't feel the compulsion to put it on. He'd called her beautiful. The Alpha King, who could have any mate in the 7 territories, had looked at her ruined face and called her beautiful. Her wolf was deliriously happy, rolling and preening inside her chest. But Sera's human heart was more cautious. What happened when the mate bond's initial intensity faded? When Kaelin had to present her to his court to the other territories? Would he still think her beautiful when Alphas sneered and Omegas whispered? A soft knock at her door interrupted the spiral of anxiety. "It's me," Kaelin's voice, pitched low so as not to wake others. "May I come in?" Sera's hand went to her face automatically, but she forced it down. He'd already seen. There was no point in hiding now. She opened the door. He stood in the hallway in simple sleep clothes, his black hair loose around his shoulders, looking less like the savage Alpha King and more like a man who couldn't sleep. In his hands, he carried a small wooden box. "I couldn't stop thinking about you," he admitted, and the vulnerability in his tone made her heart ache. "About the fact that you're down here in the servants' quarters while I'm up in that empty tower. It's not right. You're my mate. You should be with you," she finished softly, surprising herself. Relief flooded his features. "Yes, with me. Where I can protect you. Where I can," he stopped, shaking his head with a rueful smile. "Where I can just be near you. The mate bond is driving me insane. My wolf is pacing, demanding to be close to you. Mine too," she confessed. "I haven't slept at all." "Then come upstairs. Sleep in my quarters. I'll take the chair, or the floor, or stand guard at the door if that makes you comfortable. But please, Sera, I need to know you're safe." The old Sera would have refused, would have hidden behind protocol and propriety, but the mate bond hummed between them, a golden thread pulling her toward him, and she found herself nodding. "Let me just," she reached for the mask. "No." His hand caught hers gently. "Please. No more masks. Not with me. Not ever again." It went against every instinct, every survival mechanism she'd developed. But looking into those silver eyes, seeing the honest need there, she found herself nodding. They walked through the quiet fortress together, and for the first time in 12 years, Sera's face was bare in the presence of another person. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, to cover, to protect herself from judgment. But Kaelin walked beside her with such casual pride, as if escorting a queen rather than a scarred servant, that slowly, gradually, her panic eased. His quarters were warm, fire crackling in the hearth. He gestured to the massive bed. "That's yours. Stay with me?" The words escaped before she could stop them. At his surprised look, she added quickly, "Just close. I don't want to be alone." Something hot and possessive flared in his eyes, but he simply nodded. "Whatever you need, little wolf." They lay together atop the furs, not touching but close enough that Sera could feel his warmth, hear his breathing. The mate bond pulsed between them, content with the proximity. "Tell me about him," Kaelin said softly into the darkness. "Your brother. The one you tried to kill." The question should have hurt. Instead, it felt like a gift permission to remember, to speak of the dead without fear of breaking down. "Nico," she whispered. It was 8. All wild energy and terrible jokes. He wanted to be a warrior, even though he was small for his age. A smile tugged at her scarred lips. The night of the fire, he was supposed to be in the safe room with the other children, but he'd snuck out to get his favorite toy, a wooden wolf our father had carved for him. When the rogues attacked, when the fires started, I heard him screaming from the nursery. Kaelin's hand found hers in the darkness, holding tight. I got to him, pulled him out of the burning room. But we were on the 2nd floor, and the stairs were already engulfed. I tried to find another way down, but the smoke. Her voice cracked. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. The roof beam fell. I pushed Nico aside, tried to shield him, but I wasn't fast enough. It hit him, killed him, instantly. Tears slid down her scared cheek, and I just burned, trapped under the beam until the roof collapsed, And somehow, I fell through into the basement, crawled out through a drainage tunnel, survived. And have spent 12 years punishing yourself for it, Kaelin said quietly, believing you should have died with him. That surviving was somehow a betrayal. How did you? Because I did the same thing. His voice was rough with old pain. My parents were killed in a challenge when I was 17. My father was Alpha King, challenged by my uncle who wanted the throne. I should have been there, should have fought beside him, but I was off hunting with friends, playing at being a careless youth, and by the time I got back, they were both dead. Sera turned to look at him, seeing in the firelight the grief etched into his features. It wasn't your fault. I know that now. It took years, and a wise old healer who wouldn't let me wallow in guilt. But his thumb stroked over her knuckles. Just like Nico's death wasn't your fault. You tried to save him. You risked your life for him. That's not cowardice, Sera. That's love. The tears came harder now, 12 years of suppressed grief pouring out. Kaelin pulled her against his chest, holding her as she sobbed, whispering comfort in the old language, his hands gentle on her hair. When the storm finally passed, she felt hollowed out but somehow lighter. Kaelin was still holding her, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. The box, she murmured, remembering he'd been carrying something. What's in it? He reached over to the bedside table, retrieving the small wooden container. This belonged to my mother. She was different. Not Omega, not quite Beta. What we call moon-blessed, born with the ability to see things others couldn't. Read people's truths beneath their lies. Like you, Sera observed, I inherited a fraction of her gift. But she had something else. Something. I think you need to see. He opened the box, revealing a mirror. Small, framed in silver, old enough that the glass was slightly warped. Sera recoiled instinctively. I can't. This mirror doesn't show what you look like, Kaelin explained gently. It shows what you are, your true self, beneath appearance and injury and time. My mother used it to help people see themselves clearly, without the distortion of shame or pride. I don't understand. Look, he said simply, holding it up. Sera forced herself to glance at the reflection, and gasped. The face looking back at her was her own scarred side and smooth side both. But somehow, impossibly, the scars were beautiful. They caught the light like silver filigree, a testament to survival rather than ruin. Her clouded eye seemed to see more, not less, and her crooked smile. I look strong, she whispered in wonder. You look like what you are, Kaelin corrected, setting the mirror aside and pulling her close again. A survivor, a fighter, the strongest woman I've ever met, and the most beautiful. She kissed him then, properly this time, pouring 12 years of loneliness and fear and desperate hope into the connection. The mate bond flared between them, gold and silver and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kaelin's eyes had gone fully wolf gold. Tomorrow, A said, his voice rough with barely contained need. We go to Moonfire. We find the proof. We end Lydia Ashford's reign of terror. His hand cupped her scarred cheek with infinite gentleness. And then, if you'll have me, we complete this bond properly. No more hiding. No more shame. Just us. Yes, Sera breathed. To all of it. Yes. They fell asleep tangled together, two broken souls finally finding home in each other's arms. Outside, the moon rose full and bright, blessing the bond that would shake the foundations of the 7 territories. But in the shadows of Crimson Moon Fortress, Baroness, Lydia Ashford stood at her window, watching that same moon with calculating eyes. She'd heard whispers from the servants the Alpha King had taken the masked girl to his quarters, had been seen kissing her in the hallways. The scarred Omega, the last surviving heir of Moonfire, Lydia's lips curved in a smile that would have made lesser wolves flee. If the girl was alive, the land claim could be challenged. Everything Lydia had built over 12 years could crumble, but only if the girl survived to make that challenge. Lydia turned from the window, pulling out a small communication crystal. It glowed as she whispered into it, her words traveling across the territories to ears that would listen and act. The Moonfire heir still lives, she said softly. Send the cleaners. Make it look like an accident. And this time, her smile widened. Make sure there's nothing left to crawl out of the ashes. The crystal went dark. Tomorrow night, The Alpha King would take his precious, scared mate to Moonfire, searching for proof that no longer mattered, because by tomorrow night, there would be no hair to challenge anything. Lydia poured herself a glass of wine and toasted the moon. To survival, she murmured, and to knowing when to eliminate threats before they become problems. Dawn broke over Crimson Moon territory like a warning. Sera woke wrapped in Kaelin's arms, his chest rising and falling with deep, even breaths. For a moment, she simply existed in the safety of it, the mate bond humming contentedly between them, the warmth of his body against hers, the feeling of being protected rather than hidden. Then reality crashed back. Today they would return to Moonfire. Today she would face the ashes of her past. "You're thinking too loud," Kaelin murmured, his eyes still closed. "I can feel your anxiety through the bond." "How do you know it's anxiety and not excitement?" she asked, trying for levity. He opened one silver eye, pinning her with a look that saw straight through her deflection. "Because I know you, little wolf, and because I'm terrified too." The admission surprised her. The Alpha King, afraid? Of losing you? Absolutely. He pulled her closer, his nose buried in her hair. "Lydia knows we're coming. She's too smart not to have spies watching every move I make. Whatever we're walking into tonight, it's going to be a trap. Then, we don't go. We have to." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "That proof is the only way to strip her of power legally. Without it, I can't touch her without starting a war between territories. Shadow Ridge has allies, and Lydia has spent 12 years cultivating support." He lifted her scarred hand to his lips, kissing each knuckle gently. "But I swear to you, on my life and my crown, I will not let her hurt you again." A knock at the door interrupted them. "Alpha King," Thomas's voice called. "The council has requested an emergency session. It's urgent." Kaelin growled low in his throat. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Alpha Marcus insists it cannot wait. It concerns the legitimacy of territorial claims." Sera and Kaelin's eyes met. Lydia was making her move. The council chamber was already packed when they arrived. Sera had insisted on coming, though she'd reluctantly donned the mask again, not because Kaelin asked, but because facing down Lydia Ashford required armor, and the porcelain had been hers for 12 years. Lydia stood at the center of the room, resplendent in silver and blue, her expression the picture of concerned nobility. Beside her stood a man Sera didn't recognize, elderly, with the bearing of someone important. "Alpha King," Alpha Marcus said, his face troubled. "Baroness Ashford has brought forward a claim that requires immediate attention." "Has she?" Kaelin's voice was dangerously soft as he took his seat, gesturing for Sera to stand beside him rather than in the shadows. The statement was clear. She was under his protection. And what claim would that be? "The Shadow Ridge Territory Grant," Lydia said smoothly. "The one you graciously bestowed upon my pack 3 years ago. It has come to my attention that there may be irregularities in the transfer." "Irregularities?" Kaelin leaned back in his chair, every inch the predator assessing prey. "Explain." "There are rumors," Lydia's gaze flickered to Sera, "that an heir of the Moonfire pack may have survived the tragic fire 12 years ago. If true, this would invalidate the salvage claim, as pack lands cannot be transferred if a direct bloodline heir lives." The room erupted in murmurs. Alpha Marcus looked stricken, clearly blindsided by this revelation. "Rumors," Kaelin repeated flatly. "You've called an emergency council session over rumors?" "Not merely rumors, Alpha King." Lydia gestured to the elderly man beside her. "This is Elder Raymond, the former record keeper of the Moonfire pack. He survived the attack because he was visiting family in a neighboring territory that night. Raymond, please share what you told me." The old man stepped forward, his hands trembling. Not with age, Sera realized, but with fear. His eyes kept darting to Lydia like a beaten dog watching its master. "The Moonfire Alpha had 2 children, Raymond said, his voice barely above a whisper. A son, Nico, who perished in the flames, and a daughter, Serafina, aged 15 at the time of the attack. Her body was never recovered. Some believed she might have escaped." Sera's breath caught. Serafina, her full name, the one no one had used in 12 years. "Fascinating," Kaelin said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. And you're bringing this forward now because if this Serafina lives, she has a legal claim to the Moonfire territory, which means my family's claim is void. Lydia's smile was poisonous sweetness. I am, of course, deeply concerned about justice being served. If the rightful heir exists, she should be found and her claim honored. The trap was exquisite in its cruelty. If Sera revealed herself, Lydia could claim ignorance of the assassination attempt after all. She was publicly calling for the heir's return. But revealing herself also painted a target on Sera's back. Without proof of Lydia's involvement in the original attack, it would simply be a territorial dispute, one that could drag on for years while Lydia's assassins worked in the shadows. And if Sera didn't reveal herself, Lydia would push for an intensive search, using it as cover to ensure the heir died accidentally before being found. The King's Council should authorize an immediate investigation, Lydia continued. Send search parties throughout the territories. Question anyone who might have information. Surely, Alpha King, you agree that justice must be served? Every eye in the room turned to Kaelin. He sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Through the bond, Sera felt his fury and his calculation. He was searching for the angle, the move that would protect her, and expose Lydia. Elder Raymond, Kaelin said finally, his gaze fixing on the old man with predatory intensity. You were the record keeper of Moonfire. You would have been responsible for maintaining pact documents, lineage records, territorial agreements. Yes? Yes, Alpha King. Then tell me. Kaelin leaned forward slightly. What happened to those records? Were they all destroyed in the fire? Raymond's face went pale. Most were lost, my lord. The pack house burned completely. Most, but not all. It wasn't a question. Record keepers are notorious for maintaining backup documentation. It's literally your primary responsibility to ensure pack history isn't lost to disaster. So where are the backup records, Raymond? The old man's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Lydia's smile had frozen in place. They were. The fire was very sudden. The fire was at night. Sera heard herself say, her voice ringing clear through the chamber. All eyes swung to her. Record keepers maintained copies in secured locations outside the main territory. It was standard practice across all packs. My father told me so. She pulled off the mask. The room exploded with gasps and whispers. Alpha Marcus actually stood, his face a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. But Sera kept her eyes on Raymond, watching the recognition and guilt flood his weathered features. Serafina, he breathed. You survived. I survived. She confirmed, walking forward to stand before the council in full view, her scars catching the morning light. No thanks to the assassins Baroness Ashford, hired to murder my entire family. That's a serious accusation, Lydia said, but her voice had lost its honey. There was steel underneath now, and desperation. You have no proof. We will. Kaelin interrupted, standing to move beside Sera. His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in full view of the council, because Elder Raymond is going to tell us where the backup records are. And those records will include the correspondence between Alpha Moonfire and various parties regarding territorial offers and threats. Isn't that right, Raymond? The old man was shaking violently now. I cannot are being paid not to? Kaelin's voice dropped to a lethal purr. How much did Lydia give you to forget where you hid those documents? How much was your Alpha's trust worth? She said no one survived. Raymond's voice cracked, the dam breaking. She said revealing the documents would only cause political trouble, that the dead should rest peacefully. She paid for my silence, yes, but I thought I believed. Where are they? Sera asked gently, seeing the old man's genuine anguish. Please, Raymond, help me finish what my father started. Tears streamed down Raymond's face. The old watchtower, on the eastern border of what used to be Moonfire territory. There's a hidden chamber in the foundation, sealed with the pack's crest. I put everything there, lineage records, correspondence, territorial maps, all of it. Everything your father wanted preserved. Convenient, Lydia said sharply. A hidden chamber that only he knows about, containing documents that conveniently support this girl's claim. For all we know, Kaelin cut her off, his eyes blazing silver fire. You've been committing treason for 12 years. Elder Raymond will take us to this watchtower today, and we'll see what truths have been buried. The territory belongs to Shadow Ridge now, Lydia protested. You cannot simply, I'm the Alpha King. I can do whatever I damn well please. He turned to Alpha Marcus. Prepare a security detail. We leave within the hour. This is highly irregular, one of the other alphas interjected. To investigate based solely on the word of a scarred servant. She is not a servant. Kalen's power flooded the room, forcing every wolf to their knees except Sera. She is my mate, the rightful heir to Moonfire territory, and if anyone questions her legitimacy again, they'll answer to me personally. The silence was absolute. Now, Kalen continued, his voice returning to its normal deadly calm, Baroness Ashford will accompany us to this watchtower. To ensure transparency, of course. I'm sure she has nothing to hide. Lydia's mask had finally slipped completely. Rage and calculation warred in her ice-blue eyes. Of course, Alpha King. I welcome the opportunity to clear my name of these baseless accusations. But Sera saw her hand move subtly, touching a crystal pendant at her throat. A communication device. She was warning her assassins. Whatever they'd planned for tonight at Moonfire, they were moving it up. The trap was about to spring. The journey to Moonfire territory took 4 hours by horseback. Kalen had assembled a force of 20 elite warriors, all loyal to the crown. Lydia rode with her own guards, 10 Shadow Ridge wolves, who watched everything with predatory interest. Elder Raymond was escorted by Kalen's personal beta, Thomas, who hadn't let the old man out of his sight since the confession. Sera rode beside Kalen, feeling the weight of returning home after 12 years. The forest was the same ancient pines reaching toward the sky, the same deer paths she'd run as a child. But everything else felt alien, painted over with blood and ash. Talk to me, Kalen murmured, leaning close. I can feel your fear through the bond. I can feel your fear through the bond. What if the records aren't enough? She whispered back. What if she's covered her tracks too well? Then we'll find another way. But Sera had caught her chin gently, turning her face to his. No matter what happens today, you are not alone. Not anymore. We face this together. She kissed him, not caring who saw. Let them witness the Alpha King claim his scarred mate. Let them see she was no longer the invisibly girl. They crested a hill, and suddenly Moonfire territory spread below them. Sera's heart stopped. The pack house was gone. Of course, nothing but blackened foundations and wildflowers growing through the ruins. But someone had built on the land. New structures dotted the valley, bearing Shadow Ridge colors. They'd taken not just the territory but had literally buried her family's legacy under their own. Breathe, Kalen commanded softly. Just breathe, little wolf. The eastern watchtower stood where it always had, a crumbling stone structure that predated the pack itself. Ancient and weathered, it looked ready to collapse with the next strong wind. There, Raymond said, dismounting shakily. The entrance to the hidden chamber is beneath the central foundation stone. Kalen's warriors immediately secured the perimeter, while he, Sera, and Thomas followed Raymond into the tower's base. Lydia and her guards were kept outside. Under watchful eyes, Raymond knelt before a stone that looked identical to all the others. The pack crest, he murmured, pressing specific points in a sequence. Your father made me memorize it. Said it was the only way to ensure only Moonfire wolves could access the truth. The stone slid aside with a grinding sound, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Kalen lit a torch. Stay close. The chamber below was small but dry, protected by whatever magic or engineering had kept it sealed all these years. Shelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound books, rolled documents, and personal effects carefully preserved. Sera's breath caught as she recognized her father's handwriting on the spines. Pack records, alliance treaties, territorial agreements, a lifetime of careful leadership documented and saved. Here, Raymond pulled down a specific bundle of letters, his hands trembling. These are the ones that matter. The correspondence with Lydia Ashford. Kalen took them, scanning the contents by torchlight. His expression grew darker with each page. Offers to purchase, he read aloud. Increasing amounts. Veiled threats when the offers were refused. And then, he stopped, his voice dropping to something lethal. And then, a letter dated 1 week before the fire. If you will not sell willingly, Alpha Moonfire, then you leave me no choice. The North requires strong leadership, not sentimental fools clinging to worthless rocks. Your refusal has been noted and will be dealt with accordingly. That's still not proof she ordered the attack, Thomas observed grimly. Threatening language, yes, but not explicit orders. Keep reading, Raymond said quietly. There's more. Kalen pulled out another document, this one sealed with Shadow Ridge's crest. His eyes widened as he read. It's a contract, he said slowly. Between Lydia Ashford and a mercenary guild known for hiring out rogues. Services rendered. Complete territorial clearing, no survivors. Incident to appear as os. Random rogue violence. Payment. 50,000 in gold. Paid in 2 installments, half before, half after confirmation of success. He looked up, his face a mask of controlled fury. It's signed by Lydia herself, dated 3 days before the fire. The proof. Finally, undeniably, they had it. There's one more thing, Sera said, moving to a small chest in the corner. She recognized it. Her father had kept his personal journals here, away from official records. Inside, she found what she was looking for. A letter addressed to her. My dearest Seraphina, if you're reading this, then I have failed to protect you and your brother. The weight of that failure is something I will carry into whatever comes after this life. But I know you, my fierce little wolf. If there's any way to survive, you will find it. You have your mother's strength and my stubbornness, a dangerous combination. The truth of what happened here is documented in this chamber. Use it. Reclaim what is yours by right. But more importantly, my darling girl, live. Not just survive, but truly live. Find joy, find love, find purpose beyond revenge. You were meant for greatness, Seraphina. Not because of your bloodline, but because of who you are: brave, compassionate, strong. The scars you may bear are not weakness. They are proof that you fought, that you cared, that you loved enough to try. Be the alpha. I know you can be. Not for duty or honor, but because you choose it. With all my love, your father. Sera's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the letter. Kalen was there instantly, supporting her, his arms wrapping around her, as she finally let herself grieve. He knew. She sobbed against his chest. He knew, and he wrote to me anyway. He believed I'd survive. Of course he did, Kalen murmured into her hair. Because you're extraordinary. He saw what I see: a survivor, a fighter, an alpha. A commotion above interrupted them. Shouts, the sound of steel being drawn. Thomas was already moving, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Kalen pulled Sera behind him protectively as they followed, emerging into chaos. Lydia's guards had drawn weapons. More wolves. Shadow Ridge reinforcements poured from the forest. 20, 30, 50. More than enough to overwhelm Kalen's force. And at the center of it all, Lydia Ashford smiled like a wolf with prey cornered. I'm sorry, Alpha King, she said, not sounding sorry at all, but I cannot allow those documents to leave this place. You understand, surely. Too much has been invested. Too many years of careful planning. The girl should have died 12 years ago. It seems I'll have to finish the job personally. You're committing treason, Kalen said, his voice deadly calm even as his warriors formed a defensive circle. Attacking the Alpha King is an act of war. Only if anyone survives to report it. Lydia's smile widened. The story will be tragic, of course. The Alpha King and his scarred pet, killed. Investigating a dangerous abandoned structure. So sad, so preventably. She gestured to her forces. No survivors. Burn it all. The Shadow Ridge wolves attacked. Kalen shifted instantly, his massive black wolf form intercepting the first attacker. His warriors followed suit, the narrow area around the tower erupting into vicious combat. Thomas stayed in human form, protecting Raymond and the documents with a silver-edged blade. Sera found herself grabbed from behind, a knife at her throat. One of Lydia's guards, grinning with malicious triumph. Should have stayed dead, little Omega. He hissed in her ear. Sera's wolf, dormant for 12 years, had been awakened by the mate bond, and she was done hiding. The shift tore through her like lightning, not painful, but powerful. Her white wolf erupted forward, smaller than the male's but faster, more agile. The guard's knife clattered away as her jaws found his throat. She'd never killed before, never even fought, but instinct and rage guided her, 12 years of fear transforming into fury. Another wolf lunged at her. She dodged, her smaller size an advantage in the cramped space. Her teeth found his leg, crunching down until he howled and retreated. Through the chaos, she saw Kaelin fighting like the savage king. He was rumored to be efficient, brutal, protecting his warriors even as he decimated the enemy. He was magnificent, but there were too many. Even with the element of surprise fading, Lydia's forces outnumbered them significantly. A massive grey wolf, one of Lydia's commanders, barreled toward the tower entrance where Thomas stood guard. Sera threw herself in the way, catching the wolf's momentum with her shoulder. They tumbled together, rolling across the blood-slicked ground. He was stronger, heavier, more experienced, but she was fighting for more than territory. She was fighting for her family's memory, for justice, for the mate bond thrumming in her chest, for the life she'd finally found after 12 years of hiding. She was fighting to be seen. Her jaws found his ear, tearing. Her claws raked his exposed belly. When he tried to pin her, she twisted with desperate strength, throwing him off balance. And when he lunged for her throat, she was already moving, her teeth sinking deep into his neck. The killing bite came easier than it should have. The wolf collapsed, and Sera stood over him, panting, her white fur splattered with red. Around her, the battle was turning. Kaelin's elite warriors were devastating once they'd adapted to the ambush. And more help was arriving. Alpha Marcus's forces, alerted by the scouts, poured into the clearing. Lydia saw the tide turning, saw her carefully laid plans crumbling. She shifted, her pale blonde wolf form bolting for the forest. Mine. Sera heard herself growl through the mental link all shifted wolves shared. She gave chase. Lydia was fast, desperate, fleeing through trees. Sera knew by heart. These were her forests, her land, her home. Every path and stream and hiding place was etched in childhood memories. They ran deep into Moonfire territory, past the ruins of her pack house, past the meadow where she'd played with Nico, past the stream where she'd learned to fish, to the ceremony stone. Lydia skidded to a halt in the sacred clearing, shifting back to human form. "You can't catch me here," she panted. "I'll kill you, just like I should have killed you 12 years ago." Sera shifted as well, standing naked and unashamed in the place where her pack had gathered for generations. "You took everything from me, my family, my home, my face. 12 years of my life spent hiding because of what you did. You should have stayed hidden." Lydia hissed, pulling a silver blade from somewhere. "Should have stayed that pathetic masked servant. But you had to catch the Alpha King's attention. Had to become inconvenient." "I became more than inconvenient," Sera said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline singing through her veins. "I became the person my father believed I could be. Strong, brave, alive." Lydia lunged, the silver blade aimed at Sera's heart. Sera had spent 12 years running from violence, hiding from confrontation, making herself small and invisible and safe. But she was done running, done hiding, done being afraid. She caught Lydia's wrist, using the woman's momentum against her, a move her father had taught her when she was young. They grappled, falling to the ground, the blade between them. "You're weak," Lydia snarled. "Scared, broken. You'll never be strong enough." "I survived you," Sera gasped, fighting for control of the blade. "That makes me stronger than you'll ever be." The knife changed hands, changed positions, found a target. Lydia's eyes widened with shock, looking down at the silver blade buried in her chest. "How? My father left instructions," Sera said softly, watching the life drain from her family's murderer. "In his letter, he told me about this place, about the hollow beneath the ceremony stone, about how he'd hidden weapons here, just in case. Silver blades blessed by moon magic, deadly even to highborn wolves." She'd grabbed it while Lydia was lunging, her fingers finding the familiar shape in the hollow base by instinct and memory. Lydia collapsed, her blood soaking into the sacred ground where Moonfire Pack had celebrated life for generations, where they'd howled at full moons and blessed new pups, and mourned their dead, where justice, finally, had been served. Sera stood slowly, looking down at the woman who'd destroyed her childhood. She waited for satisfaction, for triumph, for some sense of completion. Instead, she just felt tired. "Sera," Kaelin's voice called through the trees. He burst into the clearing, still in wolf form, followed by a dozen warriors. He shifted immediately, his human eyes scanning her for injuries. "Are you hurt? When you chased after her, He saw Lydia's body and understanding dawned. "It's done," Sera said quietly. "It's finally done." He pulled her into his arms, and she let herself collapse against him, the adrenaline finally fading. Around them, his warriors secured the area, but Kaelin's focus was entirely on her. "You're magnificent," he murmured against her hair. "Absolutely magnificent. I'm covered in blood and standing naked in a forest. Magnificent," he repeated firmly. Then, more seriously, "How do you feel?" "I don't know." She looked at Lydia's body, at the ceremony stone, at the forest that had been her childhood home. "I thought I'd feel different, that killing her would fix something inside me. But revenge doesn't heal wounds," Kaelin finished gently. "It just closes chapters." "Yes." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I want to go forward now, not back. She took a shaky breath. "I want to complete the mate bond, officially. I want to be your Luna, if you'll still have me." "Still have you?" He laughed, the sound rough with emotion. "Little wolf, I'd follow you into fire itself. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and the bravest, and the most beautiful. If you'll have me scarred, savage, more beast than man sometimes, I'll spend eternity proving you made the right choice." She kissed him, there in the sacred clearing where her family had once celebrated life, where she'd just delivered justice for their deaths, where she was finally ready to start living again. When they broke apart, Thomas appeared at the clearing's edge, politely averting his eyes. "Alpha King, the battle is won. Lydia's remaining forces have surrendered." And he held up a leather satchel. "We have all the documents safely secured." "Good." Kaelin pulled off his shirt, wrapping it around Sera's naked form. "Send word to all 7 territories. The Alpha King has chosen his mate in Luna, and the Moonfire territory is returned to its rightful heir, Serafina Moonfire, Alpha of the restored pack." "Alpha," Sera breathed, testing the word. It felt right. Heavy with responsibility, but right. "If you want it," Kaelin said, "the choice is yours. You could join my pack, take a different title, leave leadership to others. But I think," he cupped her scarred face gently, "I think you were meant for this. To reclaim not just your land, but your legacy. To lead." She thought of her father's letter. "Be the Alpha. I know you can be. Not for duty or honor, but because you choose it." "I choose it," she said firmly. "I choose to lead, to rebuild, to make Moonfire something my family would be proud of." She smiled, crooked and scarred and absolutely radiant. "And I choose you, my mate, my king, my home." The howls that rose from the assembled warriors echoed through the forest, a song of celebration and new beginnings. 3 months later, Sera stood in the great hall of Kaelin's fortress, but it felt different now. Not because the room had changed, but because she had. She wore no mask. Her scars were displayed openly, along with the Luna's mark on her neck where Kaelin had bitten her during their mating ceremony. Some wolves still stared, some still whispered, but now she met their gazes steadily, unashamed. The Alpha King's Luna. The Alpha of the restored Moonfire pack. The scarred queen who'd survived fire and betrayal, and 12 years of hiding to reclaim her birthright. "Ready?" Kaelin asked, offering his arm. "Ready," she confirmed. They walked into the throne room together for the formal announcement. Representatives from all 7 territories had gathered to witness the official recognition of Moonfire's restoration and Sera's claim as Alpha. Elder Raymond was there, living now in the rebuilt Moonfire territory, serving once again as record keeper. Alpha Marcus of Crimson Moon, who'd become an unexpected ally. Even some of Shadow Ridge's wolves, now led by a new Alpha, who'd pledged to make amends for Lydia's crimes. Kaelin ascended too, his throne, pulling Sera up to sit beside him in the Luna's seat, equal, partner, queen to his king. "The Alpha King recognizes Serafina Moonfire," the herald announced. "Alpha of the Moonfire pack, Luna of the crown, mate to the king. All territories will acknowledge her authority and her claim." One by one, the Alphas bowed not deeply, but in respect, acknowledgement of her power and position. Sera had spent 12 years invisibly, hidden, afraid. Now she sat before them all, scarred and strong and absolutely unafraid. "I have one more thing," Kaelin said quietly, "just for her." He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a crown. Not elaborate or jeweled, but simple silver shaped like flames. Your father's. Raymond found it in the ceremony stone's hollow, where you found the blade. He'd hidden it there, hoping you'd reclaim it someday. Tears burned in Sera's eyes as Kaelin lifted the crown, placing it gently on her head. All hail the Luna Queen, he said, his voice carrying to every corner. May her reign be long, her justice fair, and her strength unbreakable. All hail the Luna Queen. The crowd echoed. Later, when the ceremony had ended and the crowds dispersed, Kaelin found her standing on the balcony, staring out at the territories spread below them. Regrets? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. None. She leaned back against him, feeling the mate bond hum contentedly between them. I was thinking about Nico, about my parents, about everyone I lost. They'd be proud of you. I think so too. She turned in his arms, looking up at her savage king with his silver eyes and scarred soul that matched hers perfectly. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. Not just looking, but truly seeing. For calling me beautiful when I felt most broken. For being patient while I learned to be strong again. She touched his face gently. For being home. You were always strong, little wolf. You just needed permission to show. He kissed her forehead, her scared cheek, her lips. And as for home, you are mine. You've been my home since the moment I saw you trying to disappear into the shadows. My wolf knew. My soul knew. You were always meant to be found. And you, she said softly, were always meant to be the one to find me. Below them, in the rebuilt Moonfire territory, lights began to appear as evening fell. New families. New beginnings. A pack rising from ashes, led by a scarred alpha who'd learned that survival was just the first step. That true strength came from choosing to live, not just exist. From choosing to be seen. Sera had worn a mask for 12 years, hiding from a world that had hurt her. But the Alpha King had ripped it away and called her beautiful. Had seen past the scars to the survivor underneath. Had given her permission to stop hiding and start ruling. And she'd discovered that the face she'd been hiding wasn't broken at all. It was the face of a queen. Epilogue 5 years. Later, a small white-haired girl with mismatched eyes, one silver like her father's, one clouded like her mother's, ran through the rebuilt Moonfire pack house, laughing as she chased a wooden wolf toy. Careful, Nia, Sera called, watching her daughter tumble and roll with the resilience of youth. The little girl looked up, her face showing the same scarring pattern on the right side that Sera bore. A genetic trait, the healers said, passed through the female line. What had once been a source of shame was now worn with pride. The mark of Moonfire survivors. Mama, tell me the story, Nia demanded, climbing into Sera's lap. About the fire and the king and the mask. Again? Sera laughed. I've told it 100 times, but I like it, Nia insisted. Especially the part where Papa calls you beautiful. Kaelin appeared in the doorway, grinning. That's my favorite part too. You're both impossible, Sera said, but she was smiling. Very well. Once upon a time, there was a Brody, girl who wore a mask. As she told their story to her daughter. Sera thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain and the healing, the hiding and the revealing. The journey from broken to whole, from invisible to seen, from servant to queen. She'd learned that scars weren't shameful. They were proof you'd fought, proof you'd survived, proof you'd loved enough to try. And in the end, the greatest gift hadn't been the crown, or the restored territory, or even the mate bond, though she treasured all of those. The greatest gift had been learning to see herself the way Kaelin had always seen her, not as broken, but as beautiful, not as damaged, but as strong, not as something to hide, but as someone worth seeing. The masked girl was gone. The Luna Queen had taken her place, and she would never hide again. The autumn sun painted the Moonfire territory in shades of gold and crimson as Sera stood at the ceremony stone, watching her pack gather for the harvest. Festival. A decade had passed since she'd reclaimed her birthright, and the land had flourished under her leadership. Where once there'd been only ash and wildflowers, now stood a thriving community, homes built from timber and stone, training grounds where young wolves learned to fight, gardens where healers cultivated rare herbs, and at the center of it all, the new pack house that honored the old while embracing the future. Mama, Nia's voice rang across the clearing. At 10 years old, She was already showing signs of the alpha. She'd become confident, fierce, with her mother's compassion and her father's unwavering sense of justice. Her scars, mirrored images of Sera's, caught the light as she ran. Aunt Lyra says the Luna Queen needs to stop hiding in the forest and come give the opening speech. Sera smiled. Hiding. She hadn't hidden in a decade, yet old habits died hard. Even now, when she needed quiet to think, she found herself drawn to the edges rather than the center. Tell Aunt Lyra I'm coming, Sera called back. And that Luna Queens don't hide. They strategically observe. Nia giggled, running back toward the gathering with the boundless energy of youth. Sera took one more moment alone, her fingers tracing the ceremony stone's surface. Beneath this stone, she'd found the blade that ended Lydia Ashford. Beneath this stone, her father had hidden proof of his daughter's strength. This place was sacred, not just because of pack tradition, but because it represented transformation, death and rebirth, ending and beginning. Still talking to rocks, little wolf? She turned to find Kaelin leaning against a tree, watching her with those silver eyes that still made her heart skip after all these years. He'd aged gracefully, his black hair now streaked with distinguished gray at the temples. New scars layering over old ones, each a story of battles fought and won. The stone listens better than most wolves, she replied, moving into his arms with the ease of a decade's practice. The mate bond hummed between them, as strong now as the day they'd completed it. Stronger, perhaps, forged through years of partnership and challenge. The pack is getting restless, murmured against her hair. They want to see their alpha, want to hear how Moonfire has become the most prosperous territory in the 7 kingdoms. You're exaggerating. I'm not. He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. Do you have any idea what you've built here, Sera? Moonfire was supposed to be a cautionary tale, a dead pack, a lost territory. Instead, you've made it a beacon. Other territories send their youth here to train. Healers from across the kingdom study in your gardens. You've created something unprecedented. We created it, she corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without your strength, your vision, your refusal to let trauma define you. His thumb traced her scared cheek with infinite gentleness. I supported. But you built this. You led. You chose to live instead of merely survive. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted from the festival grounds. Not danger, Sera would have felt that through the pack bonds, but excitement. Anticipation. They walked back together, hand in hand, to find the entire pack assembled. 300 wolves now called Moonfire home, a mix of those who'd survived other pack dissolutions, orphans who'd found refuge here, and young families seeking the progressive leadership Sera offered. At the front stood Lyra, once a servant in Crimson Moon, now Sera's beta and closest friend. Beside her, Elder Raymond, ancient now but still sharp, holding the ceremonial staff that had once belonged to Sera's father. And there, making Sera's breath catch, stood 3 figures she hadn't expected. Her old Mistress Harding from Crimson Moon, gray-haired and nervous. Noah, the half-wolf who'd first helped her reach the Alpha King, now a respected warrior in Kaelin's forces. And a young woman Sera almost didn't recognize, but the eyes gave her away. Mira? Sera breathed. The girl stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. You remember me. How could she forget? Mira had been one of the younger servants in Eleanor's household, a timid thing of 14 who Sera had protected from the worst of Eleanor's rages. She'd disappeared years ago, and Sera had feared the worst. I remember, Sera said, moving forward to embrace her. What happened to you? Where have you been? Running, Mira whispered. Eleanor tried to take me with her into exile. I escaped, but I was afraid she'd find me, afraid to trust anyone. She pulled back, her young face showing premature lines of hardship. But I heard about you, about the masked servant who became Luna Queen, about how you built a place where the broken could heal. She looked around at Moonfire with wonder. I came to see if it was true, if someone like me could belong here. Sera's throat tightened with emotion. Someone like you? Mira, there's no someone like you. There's just you, brave enough to run, strong enough to survive, wise enough to seek home when you found it. She raised her voice to carry across the assembled pack. Moonfire was built on a simpler principle, that survival is just the beginning, that scars don't define us, that everyone deserves a place to belong, to heal, to become who they were meant to be. The pack howled in agreement, the sound rolling across the valley like thunder. Today we celebrate the harvest, Sera continued, feeling the weight and rightness of leadership. We celebrate abundance after scarcity, growth after devastation, life after loss. But we also celebrate each other, every wolf who chose this pack, who chose to build something new from old ashes. She looked at Mira, at Noah, at Mistress Harding, who'd once been cruel but had come here seeking some kind of redemption, at Elder Raymond, who'd found the courage to tell the truth, at Lyra, who'd transformed from servant to leader, at Nia, watching her mother with proud eyes, learning what true strength looked like. Moonfire doesn't belong to me, Sera said. It belongs to all of us. Every wolf who's ever felt broken, overlooked, scarred. This is our home, our sanctuary, our proof that the fire doesn't have to destroy us. It can forge us into something stronger. The celebration that followed was everything a pack festival should be: food and music, stories shared and friendships forged. Children racing through the crowds while elders watched with indulgent smiles. But as the sun set and the fires were lit, Sera found herself drawn away from the festivities one more time. She walked to the old pack house ruins, where wildflowers now grew in profusion. Someone had placed a memorial stone here, a simple marker listing the names of those who'd died in the fire. Her family, her pack, the foundation of everything she'd become. "I did it, Papa," she whispered, kneeling before the stone. "I became the alpha you believed I could be. I built something worth fighting for. I found love and purpose and strength I didn't know I had." Her fingers traced Nico's name, her brother who would have been 20 now. "I hope you're proud. I hope wherever you are, you know that we survived, that your legacy lives on." The wind rustled through the wildflowers, carrying the scent of pine and smoke and home. "They're proud." Sera turned to find Elder Raymond standing behind her, leaning heavily on his staff but steady. "How do you know?" "Because I knew your father, child. Knew his heart, his dreams, his fears." The old man lowered himself carefully to sit beside her. "He used to tell me that he didn't want Moonfire to be the most powerful pack or the wealthiest or the largest. He wanted it to be the pack where every wolf knew their value, where strength was measured not in violence, but in compassion, where leadership meant service. I've tried to honor that vision." "You've exceeded it." Raymond's weathered hand found hers. "I failed your father once, staying silent when I should have spoken, letting fear keep me from justice. But watching you these past years, watching you forgive me, trust me, let me serve again has been my redemption." He squeezed her hand. "You didn't just rebuild Moonfire, Serafina. You rebuilt the very concept of what a pack could be." Tears slid down Sera's scarred cheek. "I couldn't have done it alone. No one can. That's the point." He smiled. "Your father knew that. He built alliances, fostered friendships, valued every pack member regardless of rank. You inherited his wisdom. But you added something he never had to face. You know what it means to lose everything and rebuild from nothing. That knowledge, that empathy, makes you extraordinary." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, the festival fires glowing in the distance. Finally, Raymond spoke again. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have mentioned years ago, but I was waiting for the right moment." He pulled a small object from his pocket, a medallion worn smooth with age. "Your father gave this to me the night before he died. Made me swear to give it to you when you'd truly become alpha, not just in title, but in spirit." Sera took the medallion, turning it over in the firelight. One side showed the Moonfire crest, a wolf howling at flames. The other side bore an inscription in the old language. What does it say? "From ashes we rise. From scars we lead. From love we endure." Raymond's voice was thick with emotion. "It was your family's motto, going back generations. But your father added the last line, from love we endure. He said that power without compassion was just tyranny. That true leadership required heart." Sera closed her fist around the medallion, feeling its weight. "Thank you for keeping this, for keeping faith. Thank you for making faith, an old fool's redemption, possible." They walked back to the festival together, and Sera found Kaelin waiting at the edge of the gathering. He took one look at her face and knew something had shifted. "What is it?" She showed him the medallion, explaining its significance. I've been so focused on proving I could lead, on showing I was strong enough, that I forgot the most important part. The love, the compassion, the heart my father valued above all else. You haven't forgotten that at all, Kaelin said, pulling her close. It's in everything you do. Every decision you make prioritizes your pack's well-being. Every wolf here knows you die to protect them, not because you're alpha, but because you care. I want to do something, Sera said suddenly. Something to honor not just my family, but everyone who survived trauma, everyone who's rebuilding. What did you have in mind? A sanctuary, an official one, with resources and protection. A place where wolves fleeing abuse or violence or loss can come and know they're safe, that they'll be seen and valued and helped. She looked up at him, eyes blazing with purpose. We have the space, the resources, the knowledge. Moonfire was my sanctuary when I had nowhere else to go. I want to make that permanent. Official. A beacon for the lost. Kaelin's smile was fierce and proud. Then let's make it happen. The Alpha King fully supports the Luna Queen's vision. That night, as the festival wound down and pack members drifted home, Sera stood before the ceremony stone one last time. Nia was asleep on Kaelin's shoulder, worn out from dancing. The new sanctuary plan was already being discussed by the council. Mira had formally requested to join the pack and been unanimously accepted. Everything was as it should be. Better than she'd ever dreamed possible 10 years ago, when she'd stood in this exact spot, mask in hand, terrified of being seen. No regrets? Kaelin asked, reading her expression with a decade's practice. None, Sera said firmly. Not the scars, not the pain, not even the 12 years of hiding, because all of it, every terrible moment led me here, to this pack, to you, to the life I was always meant to live. She looked down at the ceremony stone, remembering the frightened girl who'd pulled off her mask, the broken woman who'd found a blade beneath this stone, the alpha who'd claimed her birthright in this clearing. I used to think the fire destroyed me, she said quietly, that it burned away everything I could have been, and left only ruins. But I was wrong. The fire didn't destroy me, it forged me. Every scar is proof that I survived. Every year of hiding taught me patience. Every moment of pain prepared me for this, for leadership, for love, for purpose. Kaelin kissed her temple. The crown of flames. What? That's what they call you in the other territories. Not the Luna Queen, though they use that too. But among themselves, you're the crown of Sips. Flames the alpha who rose from fire, who wears her scars like crowns, who turns suffering into strength. He smiled. It suits you. Sera thought about it, the crown of flames. The girl who'd hidden behind porcelain, now a symbol of survival and transformation. The servant who'd become queen. The scarred Omega who'd proven that beauty had nothing to do with perfection, and everything to do with authenticity. Yes, she said finally. It does suit me. They walked home together through the peaceful territory, their daughter asleep between them, their pack secure around them, their future bright with possibility. And Sera realized that this moment of simple contentment was the greatest victory of all. She'd survived the fire. She'd reclaimed her legacy. She'd found her mate and built her pack and created something meaningful from ashes. But more than that, she'd learned to be seen, to stand in full view, scars and all, and know without doubt that she was enough. Not, despite her past, but because of it. Not in spite of her scars, but because they told the story of her strength. For 12 years, she'd worn a mask to hide her scars. Now she wore her scars like a crown, proof of battles fought, survived, and ultimately won. The masked girl was gone forever. The crown of flames had taken her place, and she would burn bright for all the lost souls still searching for home, showing them that survival was just the beginning and that on the other side of hiding was a life worth living. The first snow of winter fell softly on Moonfire territory as Sera stood in the Great Hall, watching 3 generations of her family gather for the annual Survivors' Feast. Her hair, once pale blonde, was now silver white, not from age alone, but from the magic that came with being a long-lived alpha bonded to an alpha king. The scars on her face had faded slightly over the decades, but she'd never considered having them healed. They were part of her story, and she wore them with the pride they deserved. "Grandmother," a young voice called out. Sera turned to see her granddaughter Nico, named for the brother she'd tried to save, running toward her with characteristic enthusiasm. At 7 years old, she bore the moonfire scars on the right side of her face, just as her mother Nia had, just as Sera did. 3 generations marked by fire and survival. Careful, little flame, Sera laughed, catching the child in her arms. You'll knock over the memorial candles. Mama says you're going to tell the story tonight, Nico said, her mismatched eyes one silver, one clouded wide with anticipation. The real story, not the shortened one. The real story is very long. I don't care. I want to hear about the mask and the Alpha King and how you were brave enough to show your face, even though you were scared. The child touched Sera's scars with innocent reverence. And how these marks mean we're strong, not broken. Sera's throat tightened with emotion. This was what she'd built, not just a territory or a pack, but a legacy where scars were honored rather than hidden, where survival was celebrated, where strength was measured in compassion rather than conquest. I'll tell it, she promised. Every word. The hall filled quickly as sunset approached. The survivors' feast had become Moonfire's most important tradition, a night where anyone who'd overcome trauma, loss, or violence could share their story and be witnessed, honored, seen. Sera looked across the crowd, marveling at the faces gathered here. There was Mira, now 40 years old, and serving as Moonfire's head of sanctuary services. She'd personally helped over 3,000 displaced wolves find safety and healing over the past decades. Elder Raymond's great-grandson, who carried the old record-keeper's meticulous dedication to truth. Lyra, gray-haired now but still fierce, training the next generation of leaders. And there, silver threading through his black hair, wearing his crown with the same casual authority he'd always possessed, was Kalen, her mate, her king, the man who'd ripped off her mask and called her beautiful when she'd felt most broken. Their eyes met across the room, and even after 25 years, the mate bond flared with recognition and love. Ready? He mouthed. She nodded. The hall quieted as Sera took her place at the head of the room. Not on a throne, Moonfire didn't believe in elevating leaders above their pack, but standing level with everyone else, surrounded by the memorial flames that honored those who died in the original fire. 25 years ago tonight, Sera began, her voice carrying to every corner. I stood in a different hall wearing a porcelain mask. I'd been hiding behind it for 12 years, believing my scars made me something shameful, something broken, something that needed to be concealed. Young Nico sat at her feet, looking up with rapt attention. I was a servant then, invisible and voiceless. I'd survived a fire that killed my entire pack, including my family. I'd spent more than a decade making myself as small as possible, believing that safety came from being unseen, that love required perfection, that I had to hide my pain to be worthy of belonging. She paused, looking around the room at the faces, watching her, some scarred like hers, some bearing different marks of survival. All of them here because Moonfire had become what she'd needed 25 years ago, a place to be seen. Then the Alpha King came to visit the pack where I served, and he did something no one had done in 12 years. He looked at me, really looked, not past me or around me or through me, but at me. He saw the mask and asked why I wore it. When I lied, he called me on it. And when I finally found the courage to remove it, her voice caught with remembered emotion, he called me beautiful. Kalen stepped forward, taking her hand. Because you were, he said simply. Because you are. Because beauty has nothing to do with perfection and everything to do with truth. Those words changed my life. Sera continued, squeezing his hand. Not because they fixed me, I wasn't broken, but because they gave me permission to see myself differently, to understand that my scars weren't shame marks, they were survival marks, proof that I'd fought, that I'd loved, that I'd tried. She turned to the memorial flames, each one representing a life lost in that fire 25 years ago. My father left me a letter. In it, he told me that scars are not weakness. They're proof that you fought, that you cared, that you loved enough to try. He told me to be the alpha I could be, not for duty or honor, but because I chose it. She looked at young Nico. And I chose it. I chose to stop hiding. I chose to reclaim my name, my legacy, my power. I chose to build something from ashes. But more importantly, she continued, her gaze sweeping the assembled wolves, I chose it to make sure no one else would have to hide the way I did. That's why Moonfire exists, as it does today, not just as a pack, but as a promise. A promise that every wolf who comes here will be seen, will be valued, will be given space to heal and grow and become who they were always meant to be. A young wolf in the back raised their hand tentatively. Sera recognized them, a recent arrival at the sanctuary, still bearing fresh wounds from an abusive pack. Yes? Do the scars ever stop hurting? They asked quietly. Not the physical ones. The other kind. The ones inside. Sera considered the question carefully. Honestly, some pain never fully leaves. I still have nightmares sometimes about the fire, about my brother's death, about the years I spent hiding. But, she smiled, touching her scarred cheek, the pain changes. It becomes part of your story rather than the whole story. It becomes something you survived, rather than something that defines you. And you're not alone in carrying it, Kaelin added. That's what pack means. What mate bonds mean. What family means. We carry each other's pain so the burden isn't so heavy. The young wolf nodded, tears sliding down their face. Around them, others were crying too, not from sadness, but from recognition, from feeling seen and understood. The feast tonight honors everyone in this room, Sera said. Every person who survived something that should have destroyed them. Every wolf who chose to keep going even when stopping seemed easier. Every soul who found the courage to be seen rather than hide. She raised her glass. To survival. To scars. To the strength it takes to live authentically. And to Moonfire, may it always be a beacon for the lost, the broken, the scarred, and the surviving. May it always remind us that the fire doesn't have to destroy us. It can forge us into something stronger. To Moonfire, the hall echoed. As the feast began, Sera found herself pulled aside by Nia, her daughter now 35 and preparing to take over as Moonfire's alpha, when Sera finally retired. I'm scared, Nia admitted quietly. What if I can't lead the way you have? What if I'm not strong enough? Sera cupped her daughter's scared face, seeing her own reflection there. You're already strong enough. You were born from a line of survivors, raised in a pack built on compassion, and trained by leaders who value heart over power. She smiled. But more than that, you have something I didn't have when I started. You've never had to hide. You've always known your worth. That confidence will make you extraordinary. Will you tell me if I'm getting it wrong? Every single time, Sera promised. That's what mothers do. And alphas. And friends. We witness each other honestly, even when it's hard. As the night deepened and stories were shared around the memorial flames, Sera found herself back at Kaelin's side, watching their pack, their family celebrate survival and transformation. Any regrets? He asked, the same question he'd asked 25 years ago. None, she answered, the same reply she'd given then. But now she added, I spent 12 years hiding behind a mask, believing I needed to be perfect to be loved. Now I've spent 25 years learning that the opposite is true, that being authentic, scars and all, is what makes us worthy of love. That vulnerability is strength. That showing our pain doesn't make us weak. You've taught that to thousands, Kaelin said. Every wolf who's come through Moonfire's sanctuary, every young alpha who studies your leadership, every person who looks at your scars and sees possibility instead of ruin. Young Nico appeared again, tugging on Sera's sleeve. Grandmother, when I grow up and become alpha, like Mama, will I be brave like you? Sera knelt down, looking into her granddaughter's eyes that reflected 3 generations of survival, strength, and unshakable resilience. You already are brave, she said. Because you're here, living openly, showing your scars without shame. That's the bravest thing anyone can do, to be fully, authentically themselves in a world that often rewards hiding. The child beamed, then ran off to join the other young wolves. Sera stood, leaning into Kaelin's embrace as they watched their legacy unfold, not just in bloodline, but in the hundreds of wolves who'd found home here, who'd learned that survival was just the beginning, that scars could be beautiful, that the fire didn't have to destroy you, it could forge you into something extraordinary. For 12 years, she'd worn a mask to hide her scars. For 25 years, she'd worn her scars as a crown of flames, a symbol of survival, transformation, and the unbreakable strength that comes from choosing to be seen. And in the faces around her, young and old, scared and smooth, broken and healing, she saw the greatest legacy of all, a world where no one had to hide, where scars were honored, where survival was celebrated, where being seen was not just safe, but sacred. The masked girl was gone forever, transformed by fire into something magnificent. The crown of flames had shown them all what was possible, and the light would never go out. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.